classification of spinal cord tumors and their clinical presentation, radiological investigation to diagnose the spinal cord tumors, differential of spinal cord tumors, and in the last, the management. Starting with introduction, the spinal cord tumors comprise of 2 to 4% of primary CNS tumors, and most of these spinal cord tumors are benign, unlike the intracranial lesion, which actually behave like malignant ones. And then the most of these spinal cord tumors they present by compression rather than invasion. Coming to the anatomy, here you can see the bony anatomy of the spine, a vertebra, where you can see different parts of our vertebra. Most posteriorly, we have the spinous processes. Then we have the laminas on the both sides. Then we have the transverse processes. Then we have the superior and inferior facets and the pedicle. And the most anteriorly, we have the vertebral body. Coming to the cross-sectional anatomy of the canal, uh, of the spinal canal, here you can see the epidural space most posteriorly, where we have the ligamentum flavum and the epidural fat. Then we have the dura mater and the subdural spaces. Then we have arachnoid and the subarachnoid spaces. Then we have the spinal cord, from where the anterior and posterior nerve roots arise. Then anterior to the spinal cord and the dura, we have the posterior longitudinal ligament. Then we have the vertebral body, and in the most anteriorly, we will have the anterior longitudinal ligament. Important ligaments of the spine, we starting from most posteriorly, we have the supraspinous ligaments. Then we have the interspinous ligaments. Then we have ligamentum flavum posterior to the spinal cord. Then anterior to the spinal cord, we have the posterior longitudinal ligament. Then anterior to the vertebral body, we have the anterior longitudinal ligament. Now coming back to the spinal tumors, the spinal tumors are classified into mainly three types: extradural, intradural, and interdural are further divided into interdural extramedullary and interdural intramedullary. So these are the three major types. Metastasis can be found in any compartment, and the most common ones are the extradural spinal tumors. They arise outside the spinal cord and the dura, and uh, they mostly involve the vertebral bodies and the epidural tissues. Then we have the interdural extramedullary spinal cord tumors. They are 40% of the spinal tumors, and they arise from the leptomeninges or the nerve roots. Then we have the intermedullary spinal tumors, which are 5% of the spinal cord tumors, and they arise within the spinal cord. So here you can see the three different types of spinal cord tumors. On the right, you can see the extradural spinal cord tumors. They actually compress the spinal cord and the dura and cause the compressive symptoms over the cord. Then we have the interdural extramedullary. It again causes compression of the cord and the nerve root. And then in the last, we have the interdural intermedullary, which actually rise within the spinal cord and cause the neurological deficits. So coming to the extradural spinal cord tumors, they are 55% of the spinal cord tumor. They arise in the vertebral bodies or the epidural spaces. The most common ones here are the metastatic spinal cord tumors. And the metastatic spinal cord tumors, which are extradural, they are most commonly osteolytic, causing bony destruction, and they arise from the lymphoma, lung, breast, and the prostates. Mets can be osteoblastic, especially in cases of the mets from the prostate and the breast. Apart from the metastatic spinal cord tumors, other extradural spinal tumors can be chordomas, osteoid osteitis, osteoblastoma, aneurysmal bone cyst, and so on. So these can be the other spinal cord tumors which are extradural. And the miscellaneous ones can be plasmacytoma, multiple myeloma, and Ewing sarcoma. Then coming to interdural extramedullary spinal cord tumors, which comprise 40% of the total spinal cord tumors, and here we have the commonest tumors are the meningiomas, neurofibromas. Then we can also have the many lipomas. They can be extramedullary and with intermedullary extension. Then we can have the miscellaneous ones like the spinal mets can also involve this space. Then we have the intermedullary spinal cord tumor. They are the least common, only 5% of, but they actually cause the most neurological deficits. Here we have the three types of divisions. The 30% are the astrocytomas, then 30% are the ependymomas, and rest of the tumors are 30%, especially the hemangioblastomas are the common ones. Then we have the malignant glioblastoma, dermoid, epidermoid, teratoma, and lipomas. These all comprise the intermedullary spinal cord tumors. And the clinical feature. Generally, we divide the clinical feature into uh, three categories. The local symptoms, then we have the neurological deficits or the limbs, and in the last we have the sphincter. So these three can be the presentation, the local symptoms of the spine, then we have the deficits of the limbs, and then we have the urinary or fecal incontinence. So the pain can be the symptom of the local spinal cord lesion. Wherever the lesion is, the pain will be localized at the same area. Then we can have the weakness of the limbs below the level of the tumor, or the sensory changes below the level of the tumor. And in the last, we can have the urinary incontinence. Fecal incontinence are less common ones, so we usually talk about the urinary incontinence. Now coming to the pain. Pain is the most common complaint in the spinal cord tumors, and especially in cases of the extradural or interdural extramedullary tumors. Pain is the most common presentation. Pain can be in two types. It can be radicular or it can be a local one, and then it can be a medullary as well. Radicular pain, they actually increases with Valsalva maneuvers and spine movements. Then the local one can be the stiffness of the neck or the back. Valsalva maneuver can also increase such type of pains. Then pain during recumbency is a classical feature of spinal cord tumors, that is the nocturnal pain. Then we have the medullary pain, which is most common in the syrinx. Then here we have the oppressive burning non-radical type of pain, which is actually often bilaterally and unaffected by the Valsalva maneuvers. Then coming to the neurological deficit or the motor weakness. Weakness is the second or third most common complaint. It usually follows the sensory symptom temporarily, and the children present most frequently with gait disturbances. Then the syndromyelic syndromes, they suggest the intermedullary spinal cord tumors, and the findings can be the upper extremity segmental weakness and decreased reflexes and dissociative anesthesia. Then we can have the long track involvement, and there will be clumsiness and ataxia, and then we can have the atrophy, muscle twitching, and fasciculations. So these can be the motor weaknesses. Then we can also have the sensory changes, and the dissociated sensory loss can be there, especially in cases of intermediate spinal cord tumors or the syrinx. And there will be decreased pain and temperature on the same side, but there will preserve light touch, as in cases of the Brown Sequard syndrome. Then we can have the paresthesias, either radicular or medullary disturbances can be there. Radicular or medullary distribution. Then we can have the sphincter disturbances. Usually the urogenital disturbances can be there, and the less common ones are the fecal ones. So it will be a difficulty in evacuating the urine. There will be retention of urine, incontinence, and impotence can also be associated with the sphincter disturbances. And these symptoms can be present early in cases of the conus or the cauda equina lesions, especially the lipomas, where the pain is not the prominent feature. So these sphincter dysfunction can be more common in the ages less than 1 year due to frequency of lumbosacral lesions like dermoids and epidermoids. Now coming to the investigation, we usually go for the radiological investigation for the diagnosis of spinal cord tumors, and we can have the X-ray of the spine, especially in cases of the bony lesions. Then we can have the MRI spine with and without contrast, and this is the main type of investigation to diagnose the spinal cord tumors. Then we can have the CT scan of the spine to assess the bony deformities or the bony involvement, and also to for the surgical approach. Then we can have the MR myelogram and the bone scan as well for different to differentiate the spinal cord tumors. So now coming to the different types of spinal cord tumors, spinal meningiomas, these are the most common interdural extramedullary spinal cord tumors, and they usually peak in the 40 to 70 years of the age, and more commonly in the female patients. And the most of the spinal meningiomas, they involve the thoracic region. About 82% of the spinal cord meningiomas occur in the thoracic spine, and then the most of them are the intradural and extramedullary, but they can also be extramedullary or both. Then the multiple spinal meningiomas, they can also occur but rarely. The clinical findings will again be divided into the local symptoms and then the neurological deficit and the sphincter deficits. So here we can have the motor and the sensory changes as well, along with the sphincter changes in cases of the spinal cord meningiomas. Here you can see the MRI T1 and T2 weighted images, where you can see an intradural but extramedullary lesion causing the compression and shift of the spinal cord. Then we can have the spinal cord schwannomas. These are again the benign tumors and the second most common intradural extramedullary tumors. And most of these spinal cord schwannomas arise from the dorsal uh, rootlets or the sensory rootlets. Early symptoms are often radicular pain, and they can be associated with the neurofibromatosis, especially the primary, uh, especially type 2 neurofibromatosis, but it can also occur with the type 1 neurofibromatosis. And the recurrence is rare in these cases, especially in cases of the total excision, but it can be recurred in cases of the neurofibromatosis. Now the location of the schwannomas, they can be mostly interdural, but there are difference of presentation in some cases where we can have the complete extradural schwannomas or a combination of extradural and interdural spinal cord schwannomas. Then we can also have a dumbbell type of neurofibromas or schwannomas, and then can and only 1% of these spinal schwannomas can be intermedullary as well. So what are dumbbell tumors? Tumors that develop a hourglass shape as a result of an anatomic barrier encountered during the growth. Not so all the dumbbell tumors are not schwannomas actually, but can also be neuroblastomas. And most of these have involvement of the contiguous interspinal, foraminal, and extraforaminal components as well. And we will see the example in the coming slides. Here we can see the classification system of the dumbbell spinal cord tumors. To simplify this, we can have the type 1 is completely intracanalicular, or they stay within the spinal canal. Then we can have the type 2 where these are extradurally actually, and they have again further divided into three types according to the extension of the neurofibroma or the schwannomas. Then in the type 3 we can have both component, where we have the two type of constriction. One constriction will be at the dura and the other constriction will be at the foraminal level. Then in type 4 we have extension into the vertebral body. In type 5 we have extension into the extralaminar space, and in type 6 we have a combination of different types of extensions of these dumbbell tumors. So the clinical features of these schwannomas or dumbbell-shaped tumors, they typically present with the local pain, and then there can be extension of the radicular pain as well, and the neurological deficit usually develop late in these cases. In cases of the severe cord compression or intermedullary extension, there can have we can also have the myelopathy as well, or in cases of this Cordac venous syndrome. Whenever you talk about or you listen about the Cordac venous syndrome, you must know that the Cordac venous syndrome is actually an neurosurgical emergency. So these are the few examples of the spinal cord tumors, especially the dumbbell shaped spinal cord tumors. Here you can see that the intercanalicular and extracanalicular part of the schwannomas causing a constriction at the level of the foramina. Now coming to the interdural intramedullary spinal cord tumors, Ependymoma is one of the commonest intermedullary spinal cord tumors. They are actually slow growing and benign lesion, and the most common glioma of the lower spinal cord, conus medullary, and the phylum are the ependymomas. And over about 50% of these phylum terminal tumors are actually the ependymomas, and they actually occur in the cervical cord. There will be a slight male predominance in the cases of ependymoma and slight peak in the third and the sixth decades, but they can actually even present in the young patient as well. So here are the examples of the intermedullary spinal cord tumors. As you can see, the lesion is completely inside the spinal cord on the T1 weighted, T2 weighted, and on the contrast images as well. Another example here you can see that the lower cervical lesion, which you can see the lesion is completely intramedullary and actually involving the spinal cord itself and not compressing or pushing it to any other side. Now, another type of intermedullary spinal cord tumors are astrocytomas. They are uncommon in the first year, but they peak in the third to fifth decade of life, and there is slight male predominance. And the ratio of low grade to high grade lesion are 3 into 1 in all ages. They can occur at any level, but most common ones occur in the thoracic spine. Then we can have the cervical spine lesions, and they can be cystic frequently where we have the high protein in the cyst fluid. Here you can see the upper cervical spine lesion. They are extensive lesion and they are large lesion. They completely are intramedullary and they can have a cystic component as well. They are difficult to differentiate from the normal spinal uh, architecture. So now coming to the dermoid and epidermoid tumors. Epidermoids are rare before the late childhood and there is slight female predominance. Cervical and upper thoracic spinal are the rare involvements, but the most common involved region is the conus medullaris. These are usually interdural extramedullary, but conus and cauda equina may have intermedullary component as well. Now coming to the lipomas, they may occur in conjunction with spinal dysraphism, and the peak occurrence is in the second, third, and fifth decades. They are technically uh, hematomas, and there will be no sex predominance. And the cervicothoracic region is the most common location for these lipomas, and the sphincter disturbance is common with these lesions, especially in cases of the lesion occurring in the lower spine. Now coming to the hemangioblastoma, it's the third most common intermediate spinal cord tumors, and they are usually non-infiltrating, well demarcated, and may have a cystic component as well. And 33% of the patient with the spinal hemangioblastoma will have von Hippel-Lindau disease, and they cannot incise nor core because of vascularity. So these are highly vascular spinal cord tumors, and there are high chances of the excisional hemorrhages. And they require the microsurgical approach similar to the AVM, where we take the blood supply before excising the spinal cord tumors. Here you can see these are the spinal cord tumors with the vascular anatomy. Another spinal cord hemangioblastoma with the uh, many vascular structures within the spinal lesion. Now coming to the METs. So most spinal cord METs are extradural, but they can also be intermedullary spinal cord METs, but they are rare. So they primarily include the small cell lung carcinoma, breast carcinoma, malignant melanoma, lymphoma, and colon cancers, and uh, they rarely present first as an intermediate spinal cord mets. Here you can see METs involving multiple spinal cord bodies, vertebral bodies actually, at the multiple levels, and even the posterior elements like the spinous process are also involved in this spinal METs. Now coming to the management of spinal cord tumors, asymptomatic lesion may be followed since there is significant risk of neurological deficit with the surgery. So for symptomatic lesion, usually we perform the surgery as soon as possible to prevent from the neurological deficits. So we generally go for the posterior approach of for any kind of spinal cord tumors. We take an incision at the midline depending on the localization of the spinal cord tumors. After separating the skin, soft tissue, and the paraspinous muscles, we actually remove the spinous process and then the lamina to reach the uh, dura. We perform a midline durotomy and then we localize the lesion inside the dura. If the lesion is interdural extramedullary, they are easier to excise because these are actually separated from the spinal cord, but the intermedullary spinal cord lesion takes more precise excision, and we usually go for the microscopic removal of these lesions. Another sign, another slide where you can see that we initially remove the bony structures like the spinal process and the lamina to reach the spinal cord and the dura, and then after durotomy or opening of the dura, we remove the spinal cord tumors. So here are the few pictures from the intraoperative uh, excision of the spinal tumors. This is a picture from the cervical meningioma where you can see the lesion is completely separated but compressing the spinal cord tumor, and we actually take out these lesions as a whole. So another slide showing the different types of spinal cord tumor. These are again the extradural, uh, interdural, extramedullary spinal cord tumors, which are completely separated from the spinal cord, but causing a severe compression and shift of the spinal cord. Thank you.